We're live.
Oh,
good evening. Oh,
really dark.
Our camera hasn't jumped into light mode yet, but we trust you can see us. Good evening. It's Bec and Deb here, putting the balance back into relationships.
I'm going to plug this in case that's anything to do with the...
Oh yeah, we're just going to plug in an energy source.
There we go. I don't know whether that makes any difference, but
hopefully you can see us. And after last week's debacle, we're fingers crossed it's all good to go this week. Last week we had a bit of an incident where we'd been talking for about half an hour before we realised that we weren't live at all and nobody could see us or hear us.
We shared the best thing in that half an hour. We shared the
beautiful show
that
no one will ever get to see, sadly. So yeah, it's great to have you with us, and here we go.
Absolutely great to have you with us. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about today was our conference, which is coming up 2 weeks. What day?
Tomorrow.
2 weeks tomorrow. Yes. So in 2 weeks we will be a little bit starstruck and a little bit welcoming all the speakers that are coming. Yeah. So we're really, really, really excited about our conference that's happening here in North Devon. So if you are watching this and you are local, or if you're watching this and you live a little way away and you fancy a trip, it would be absolutely amazing to have you with us for the conference. It's the 14th and 15th and 16th of November in Westwood Ho. And if last year is anything to go by, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And with everything that's kind of been going on behind the scenes over the last couple of weeks, I cannot see a reason why it is going to be anything other than absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
So I will make sure that there is some information below this video in case you want to go and find out more. And obviously we are always very accessible. We're always around. We're here. We're on Facebook. We have email. I'm sure it's fairly easy to find us if you have any questions about that. But we would just love you to be in the room with us. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is we are 3 days in, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, 3 days into our latest 5 days challenge. And this challenge is all around money. And oh my gosh, it's been a hugely interesting challenge so far. And we've been having some amazing conversations with people, some great interactions. And at the end of that, we are going to be offering our next mentoring is going to be starting in November, sometime towards the end of November.
After the conference, hopefully.
we might need to have go to bed
1 or 2 days off after the conference. We'll see.
And we're going to be starting our next full-on mentoring course, which is off the back of the mini money mentoring 5-day free challenge. So if you're interested in diving deeper to us and looking into, I know for me, I had so much thinking around money. I tied myself in knots about it. I worried about it. I didn't sleep. It was a huge deal for me. And yet now, life just feels quite light and free and really nice. I see it totally different. So we're going to be doing a really deep dive into that with our next mentoring. So if you're interested in that at all, please feel free to get in touch with us and we can tell you all about it.
Yeah, mentoring is one of our favourite programs, isn't it? And we just have such a great time for 3 months together. So yeah, absolutely be in touch if that's of interest to you. So what's been my living and learning this week? Well, I think it probably makes sense to talk about money because we're doing the mini money mentoring. And if you've not seen any of our kind of 5 days free stuff before, we basically for 5 days, we just put out some free videos that just do, they kind of invite you to take part in a little challenge every day. And then we share a little bit about what it is around that challenge that we think is going to be beneficial for you. And a huge part of those 5 days is us joining in. We kind of set the challenges, and it's always quite funny because we set the challenges, and as we're setting them, we're kind of there going,
"Oh, what are we going to do?
We've got to join in with this, haven't we?" Because we've just seen so many benefits in really getting out and playing with how life works.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's just something amazing and magical that happens when we kind of step out and look at how life works and kind of play with that, in the same way that, if you ever played the game Monopoly, you roll the dice and you move around the board and you see what happens, and you maybe have like a game plan and you think, oh, I'll buy these particular properties and set up houses and hotels on those properties. And just playing the game, something kind of fun and magical happens. And for me, that's that's the same with life. And these 5 days that we're doing at the moment about money, already some really interesting stuff has come up for me. So I think that's my living and learning this week is going to be around that. So we started the week we started with a really kind of simple challenge, which was to post some emojis in a Facebook group. And that was really, really good fun, because what we'd actually asked people to do was post an emoji about how they felt when we asked them to commit to being a part of the challenge. And it was really interesting to me how quickly we got an amazing array of emojis.
All sorts of everything, didn't we?
Amazing ones, like, unicorns and smiley faces and
grimacing faces and
fearful faces and all sorts of different emojis.
A witchy face. Someone wanted to see some magic.
I actually might go and find them at some point and take a little picture of all of the different ones, because it was a beautiful selection of feelings and emojis that came out from people. And for me, what I really loved about that was how that was just a perfect example of what we point to, in that a circumstance doesn't cause our feelings. Because if it did, every single person would have posted the same emoji. When you asked me to commit to these 5 days, I feel, and it would be the exact same emoji if circumstances kind of brought our feelings to us.
If it came from making a commitment.
If it came from that circumstance and that, that situation. And so it was just a really good example of how our feelings come from what we see that to be in that moment. Making that commitment for some people felt scary, for some people fun, for some people a bit nerve-wracking, for some people excitement, and some people like a whole combination of some of those things.
All sorts of everything.
And a whole range of all sorts of things. So that was, for me, that was a really fun. And I think when we set that challenge, I don't think I'd really seen that yet. Like I'd seen, we're going to get, hopefully a fun array of emojis. And I hadn't gone as far as, that's a really good example of what we're pointing to here. So that was really, really cool for me on Monday. And then over the last 2 days, we've kind of stepped it up a little bit. And yesterday we kind of asked people to create something. And in some ways that feels like quite a fun challenge. And in my mind, I'm like, that almost isn't a challenge in a way, because it's so much fun to create. And yet there was, again, a huge array of creations that kind of came out from that. But you could see in the mix of some of those where people were kind of, when they were sharing what they'd created or what they hadn't yet created or what they thought about creating, you could see that, again, the range of experiences that people were having off the back of us saying, okay, we're creative people, so let's create something. It can be absolutely anything. And again, one of them was somebody who'd created a sore foot from being out on a nice walk, right the way through to a beautiful dinner that someone created, a little business idea that was popping up for someone. And it was quite fun watching what came out, but also really interesting to see yet again that something that appears like, everyone's going to find this one fun and easy, and yet that wasn't the case, because yet again, it's not that's creating our experience.
It was amazing how many and the people that thought straight away went to the I'm not creative, I can't do this, or what do you mean by create? That doesn't make the fear and the panic that we go into. And then some of the people, this is my thing, I can do this one, isn't it great? And everything in between.
A whole range of. And then today's one has been extremely interesting. And I'm hoping at some point over the course of tonight, Deb's going to explain a little bit more about today's, because I'm wearing a very special jumper tonight. I'm going to leave that one there and see if that's something, if a little story comes out from Deb. So for me today, I think my learning is still bubbling today, actually, because today's challenge, because we're looking at money and we're looking at how creativity and money and life kind of work together, our challenge today has been for people to look at something that they could give away, and either give it away or at least go into the kind of experience of what it would feel like to give something away that means something to them. And I haven't done that challenge yet. And I'm still it's still, what's bubbling for me around that is what we share. And the reason we talked about that is because money doesn't work the way we think it does. And our peace and our okayness doesn't come from where we think it comes from. And in this case, we're talking about it coming from money and the misunderstanding that it comes from money. And so we're kind of just toying with the idea of where does your peace and your okayness come from? And so the challenge to kind of give something away that means something to you is kind of built into that, is look at whether that feeling of, you know, happiness, maybe if it's something you particularly like and you feel happy when you're looking at it, reading it, wearing it, whatever it might be, look again at where that happiness and that okayness and that peace is actually coming from. And what's kind of bubbling for me is there's 2 or 3 things that I've got in mind that I could give away. And I'm really back and forth on, yeah, but if I give it away, I'll feel this. And it's not a nice feeling that I think I'll feel. But if I keep it, I'm going to feel okay. And so I'm definitely in this challenge going back and forward on it. And so there's real learning bubbling up for me about where does that kind of, I share this all the time. This, our okayness is inbuilt. And so this challenge for me is like, okay, if that's true, Bec, if you're saying that to other people, do you really see that for you? And the challenge is there for me to step up and see that I do see it. So I haven't done the challenge yet and it's still bubbling and there's still some learning going on for me there. So watch this space. So that's my living and learning for this week.
Wow.
Which continues to live and learn through me.
And what was coming to me right at the end there when you were kind of talking about that was that's exactly why we do the challenges, because I think it's very, very easy for us to hear something and kind of go, yeah, I know that. Like the whole, I'm sure most of us, if we actually just stop for a second and say, you know, where does your security come from? It's really easy to reel off, oh yeah, I can see my security doesn't come from money. But then actually kind of having a challenge around that kind of actually wakes up in you where you still do your actions that you take, and something just slightly under the surface tells a very different story, that your deepest belief is that your security actually comes from money. And I was talking to someone not long before I came on this call and talking about this. And they were going, well, yeah, I can see my security doesn't come from money, but, you know, it does pay my bills. It does do this and it does do this. I do need it. So I do have to do this and I do have to make sure this is in place. And my living and learning this week, what I have been seeing more and more and more is that human beings have a true nature. We have a way that we work. We were actually having a conversation with someone this morning and they talked about it, about the mechanics of how all this works. And even beyond, I don't know, it's what's behind those mechanics. There's something about human beings that is deeper than what meets the eye. There's something which everything we do is pointing towards, you know, this, our spiritual nature, you might call it. There's something more to us here. And more and more and more, I have been seeing that when we innocently or accidentally or on purpose or for whatever reason, when we go against that nature, we suffer. And very, very much, I think, over the last few centuries, the way I don't know how long, I don't know how really, for a long time, from way before I was born, for a long time, you know, our society and the way that we have been living and the way that human beings have, you know, the way that parents teach their children, and I genuinely do think that it's innocently, we've kind of been straying away from our true nature more and more and more. And we've been interfering in how this system that we've been born into works. We have this idea, we have thoughts that somehow we can do it better. That, you know, if I was in charge, I would do it something differently than that. You know, we see what plays out in the world and we have this crazy idea that we could do it better. And it kind of comes from those sorts of thinking that say, yeah, but I actually do need money to pay my bills, and I do, you know, I'm the one that needs to get that. I'm the one that needs to put something in. That's down to me. I need to do it. And when we separate out from this system as a whole and believe that something is down to us in that way, when we overstep that taking responsibility that we talk about, take responsibility, but don't overstep the mark and actually think you're responsible. And I think in so many ways we've overstepped that mark. And we've gone past saying, yeah, I can see that money is useful for paying my bills, so I'm going to step up and act as if I'm responsible for making money. We've actually gone that step further and gone, hey, but you know what? I really actually am, so I do need to do this. And I think what our money challenge has been around is kind of going, come back the other side of that line. Don't stop stepping up and taking responsibility, but don't overstep that mark and actually think you are in charge of this. You can do this better than whatever is behind this system. Because the more that we begin to see our true nature and align with it, the more just amazing and magic things happen. And I can't, I can't describe what that is, and probably if you put it into words, it doesn't sound anything like the experience of it. And Bec said earlier, the jumper that she's got, some of you may know this because you may be in the challenge, but
just going to show it off a little bit there.
So we set this challenge, and this has been something that has been a bit of a learning for me. One of the things that we say a lot is know thyself. And, it's not our saying, we didn't make that up. And it's not a mistake that is one of the deepest, it's 2 words, that is one of the deepest spiritual, teachings of all time, know thyself. And absolutely one of the reasons we play around with challenges is because, to me, it's in that playing around that we learn things about ourselves. When we stand on the sidelines and imagine what it is like to do something, we don't learn in the same way as when we get in there and get our hands dirty and play with this. And so one of the challenges was to give away something that kind of, you don't want to give away. It's really easy to give away something that you think, I don't give a monkeys about that. Anyone can have it. I don't care. But there's something, if you feel like it's yours, it belongs to you and you want it, the challenge was to give something away like that. And I hadn't done the challenge today. And then the postman called. And I know I've said on these shows before, one of the things that I'm doing at the moment is a year-long, I'm not buying any brand new clothes, but a little while ago, somebody said to me, oh, does that mean you can buy something on eBay? And I've not really ever done the eBay thing. So I was having great fun and looking on eBay, and I thought, yeah, I can. And I'm going on holiday with my family next week. So I decided I'd get myself a new jumper to wear when I was on holiday. So I was scrolling through, and I was really excited to find a jumper that I really liked, and I bid on it and I got it. So I was really, really thrilled. And then today we're sat at the desk, and the next thing they said, oh, there's a parcel for you. So I opened the parcel, and it was this beautiful jumper that I'm going to wear when I'm on my holiday next week. So I was really excited. And then Bec said, oh, that jumper's really, really nice. And so then I just saw in that moment, that was my challenge. That jumper felt like it was mine. The story was, I'm going to wear that on my holiday. I'm going to, look really lovely in this jumper when I'm on holiday. And it felt really like, it's not Bec's jumper, it's mine. And then the challenge is, to give away something, just do it in that instant, something that means something to you like that. So I gave it to Bec, and it was really beautiful jumper.
And yes, and I thought I'd model it so we could tell the story.
And definitely, I think what happens when we do these things, when we go past, definitely my ego, my thinking, whatever that part of me is that you want, it did not want to give that jumper away. It didn't. There was no denying it. It was like, no, you can find another way to do this challenge. But that was the whole point of the challenge, to kind of see what happens. And the pleasure you get when it's that, I know we've talked about it here before when you talked about your sister, Kate, and things. If we give in to that immediate grabbing pleasure of keeping the jumper for yourself, there definitely would be, I would have had my lovely jumper. There definitely would have been something in that for me. But when we go past that, when we look beyond that, when we go back to our deeper, truer nature is flow and giving and being in that amazing place of everything comes to you that you need, and you do not need to hold on to anything ever. And I think that's a really difficult one to see around money. We feel like, you know, we've been brought up to think we have to save and store and keep, and to kind of see that differently. But we are so connecting more deeply with our true nature when we do that. And I can't tell you how lovely it feels now I've got over that moment. Bec looks amazing in that jumper, and I think it's just great.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely some living and learning for me.
Yeah, it came at a really beautiful moment as well today, because there was the postman kind of arrived with 2 parcels, and one was for Lucy with some new t-shirts in, and one was for Deb with her new jumper in, and I hadn't got a parcel with anything new in. And I definitely had a moment of, oh, I wish I'd ordered something now. And then what was really funny about, and you know, about kind of what happened then, was Deb handed the jumper to me, and we kind of had a moment of, really, sure, and oh, okay, thank you, and yeah, that was your challenge, and that was perfect. And 5 minutes later, the postman knocked again and said, oh, I forgot this parcel, and there was another parcel, and so Deb got to open another little, it wasn't a jumper, it was a different little gift, but it's something that's going to be in our office, which is really cute. And so just like that, the universe kind of came back with, oh, here's something else. And somehow it works in that way that
the gap is filled.
Yeah,
the gap is
and
filled.
It isn't necessarily you know, the thing that we think we might want, or it might not even be a literal another parcel that comes into the house like it was for us today. But it is, there's something that comes into that space when we notice that our peace and our okayness isn't built on that jumper or that whatever it is we're thinking of giving away. That isn't where that peace and okayness comes from. And something amazing happens in that space when we do step out and we do kind of give away whatever it is we think we
make
need.
That space when we give something away. And what's coming to me is like everything. When you think of a teapot or a cup or a glass or a house or anything, the most amazing thing about those things is the space. Because, you know, if you have a teapot or a cup, the space is where the drink goes, you know, the space is where the liquid, that's the thing about it. The fact that it has that space is what makes it so special, is what allows it to give, is what allows it to be something. And even a house, you know, the walls are just the walls. It's the space that having those walls creates. And I think that's, you know, we connect back to our true nature when we just continue to make that space, because it just becomes, it's never an empty space. It's always full of something absolutely beautiful. And when things stay still for too long, they become stagnant and they're not useful and they're not helpful. But when they are flowing and moving and being, they are just, you know, that is the tea flowing out of the teapot. It's the drink being drunk and used through us and carrying on somewhere else. It is that circle, that flow, that yeah, there's just something there, isn't there?
Yeah, I'd not seen that before, with the teacup and the teapot and the space in it. That was, oh, I like that. Yeah, I do. I absolutely love the kind of, it was a book I read a couple of years ago, which I think you lent me actually, Deb, and I can't think what it's called, but it's to do with money. It's a money book and I can't remember what it's called, so I'll perhaps have to find it. And do you know what it is?
Yes, I can see the cover of it. I think it is the, carry on talking.
I'll keep talking, and if it comes to you, and we'll post it underneath, because it's a really lovely book. And in there,
the soul of money.
There it is, the soul of money. And it is in there what's talked about. It's a couple of years since I've read it, so I'm going to absolutely paraphrase, but this is what came out for me, was this idea that money is a flowing system. It's not a like you said, stagnant. It's not a stagnant thing. And that is one of the fundamental mistakes we make with money. And I think that goes a step further. And I think it's one of the fundamental mistakes we make with life, money, all of these things we talk about.
Flow.
It's a flow. It's an absolute flow system,
continually
or a circular
making the space
loops.
And flowing.
Yeah,
definitely.
And it looks to me, and I've really watched that in the last couple of years with how my money works. There are definitely times when there's more flowing out of my bank account. There's definitely times when that's happening.
Mine too.
But equally, I've seen the times when it switches and there's money flowing in, thankfully, to my bank account. And actually, when I get out of the way and watch, that is just happening. And the mistake that I think we make sometimes is we try and step into that loop and stop it in its tracks. Oh, it's flown in. Don't let it go out. Don't let it out.
We make a dam.
And and look what happens when we dam things up. It just overflows in a mess. It just becomes extremely messy and it upsets the whole ecosystem. And to me, it's that the mistake we make is that we try and stop the flow of something. And the more we kind of step out of that and let the flow happen, the easier life is for us. And the more we watch that flow happen, and that was the massive thing that came out of that book for me from a few years ago. And I've really seen that happen in all sorts. The book particularly was about money, but I've just seen that in all sorts of areas of, life and life itself, really.
And I think that challenge today was to kind of, to see where we stop that flow, because we think something belongs to us, it's ours, and our security depends on it. Because the minute we get into that insecure thinking, we hold on to something, don't we? Yeah. And it is.
I've just had a ping moment.
Do you want to share?
No, not yet. I'll share afterwards. Kind of. I bet what basically just happened for me then was the thing that I've been thinking about giving away. I've just seen that I can give it away, and I've done, and it's happening. But I'll share some more around that when it kind of happens. I've just gone, oh yeah, it's that whole, we say the words we need to hear.
Yes,
and I just said all that about the flow and the stopping it, and I went, oh, I'm stopping the flow. I need to, there's something I need to give away, and it's gone basically.
Oh,
whew, that was nice.
So I think that was our living and learning today.
Yes.
So our question today. So this came off the back. We did a series of videos, how do I deal with, and we did all sorts of emotions. How do I deal with trauma? How do I deal with anxiety? All sorts of things. And more or less as we had finished that series, someone said, oh, please will you make a video and will you say how do I deal with jealousy? Because obviously they were probably struggling in that arena.
I'm imagining that came from them struggling.
So we'd actually finished that series by then. That was kind of done. So we thought that we would bring that in as our question today on our YouTube show, because we do like doing what you ask us to do if we possibly can.
If we get questions and stuff, it really helps us to answer questions that come from you, because it makes way more sense that, if it's something and oftentimes if one person's asking the question, at least a billion other people on the planet are having the same sort of issue.
There's nothing new. There's no new thoughts or struggles.
So quick plug before you go on to talk about that question. That video series that we did is actually available if you sign up for our mailing list. If you're not already on it, you can get copies of those videos. So you won't have to miss out on the rest of the series. But today we're going to talk about how do I deal with jealousy. So how do you deal with jealousy, Deb?
Oh, well, I would know.
As I sit here in my new jumper.
Yes. Yes, I'm so jealous that you look so
good. I'm tempted to tell you I like that jumper as well.
Yes.
No, it's actually a really good question, because it's something that I know for me it's definitely somewhere I go, jealousy, and I kind of do this.
I'm far too enlightened.
Maybe I have to answer this because you don't ever have to deal with jealousy. It's somewhere I can see that being somewhere that I used to go to a lot, and definitely is somewhere I can go to now if I'm kind of in, let's say if I've got lots of thinking going on, that can definitely be a place that I can drop into. So it's a really great question. And although we didn't manage to do it as one of the videos, I'm kind of glad we can talk about it tonight. Actually, it's a really
it's a really good one, and definitely I can totally I have definitely had that emotion, the jealousy. And what's kind of coming to me now again is like pointing to our true nature. When we get into those places, it is because we are having insecure thinking, and it is we feel that the feeling of jealousy is us wanting something that we haven't got, and it's usually, my experience of jealousy has usually been somebody else has got something that I think either should be mine or I should have. And very often, I know for me around my business, when I was working on my own and doing stuff, I would feel like I would do things. and then it felt like I should get something back. You know, it felt like when we talk about like the flow that we talked about and everything like that, it was like, oh, okay, then, so I get that. So I've done this. So yeah, come on. And it felt like other people, I would look around and see other people, well, they've got money, or they've got clients, or they've got whatever it was, you know, they've got the great man, they've got a really nice house, blah, blah, blah. All, it would just look like other people got stuff and I didn't, and it would look like, you know, there was things there that I should have. So I guess we've all been in that position, and a little bit like the 5-day challenge that we're in the middle of now, you know, that it's a great thing to play around with when we kind of do the give away something that it feels to you that there's something riding on it, because that is definitely, it's testing how jealousy works, and how, you know, what if we do give away something that we truly feel is ours and we have the right to have it, and, you know, what happens when we do that? And the reason that we start to feel jealous is because we believe that our okayness is riding on us having whatever this is, you know, the relationship, the client, the house, the handbag, whatever it is. It feels like we will be okay if we have that, and we won't be okay if we don't. I mean, that's the crux to me of what jealousy is, you know, in us when it's arising. And it's like someone else has got it, so why shouldn't I have? It's kind of put into the mix a little bit when it's jealousy. You know, you've got it, and why shouldn't I have it? And then we can kind of tick off all the things we've done to deserve that, and why we are way more deserving than, or at least as deserving. And I think, you know, today's challenge is a brilliant, brilliant way to kind of take a breath and notice that we always have everything that we need. And then we tell ourselves a story that we need something else. I've got a perfectly beautiful jumper on while we're sat here. You know, this was...
It is very nice, yeah.
This was a lovely gift, actually, from someone. Yeah. And it's like, I don't need that jumper that Bec has got, but it really, really felt to me for a bit that I did. And when we play around in the way that we have this week, and that moment that you had, it was that moment of, oh
yeah, I'm attaching my okayness to keeping that thing. Yeah. What I kind of wanted to talk about under this topic, because when I hear the word jealousy, for me, it immediately becomes about a relationship situation. And I'm going to talk about a specific situation that happened for me, and that I wouldn't say that it won't ever happen again, because I don't know that, but it feels like the last time this happened for me, something big shifted, and now it's not likely to happen in quite the same way. So I basically what happened for me was, it was about a year ago actually, and the reason I know that is because it happened in Spain when the Viva conference was on. I have a best friend who lives in a different country to me, and we don't see each other that often, but one of the places we managed to see each other last year was in Spain at a conference. And over the course of about the week, we were there for about a week, weren't we, I think, and over the course of that week, my head went into a real tailspin, and I was extremely jealous because my best friend was talking to other people.
No,
true story. And hanging out with other people and having a nice time with other people.
Sack them off as your best friend.
I know, right?
That's how you deal with jealousy.
No, Deb. And that, I mean, definitely, I'm laughing about it now, but Deb will tell you there was a particular day where it hit the wall and I was just in bits, and I'd got this whole situation, you know, revved up as, he's my best friend, we should be hanging out, he should be taking time out with me, not hanging out with other people, why doesn't he care about me as much as I care about him? You know, all of that stuff was going on in my head, and I built up this humongous story, and I got to this point where and what's funny about this now is that all that was going on for me, and none of that was going on for him at all. And he just kind of came and said, oh, you know, going off to this little village today. Do you want to come hang out? You know, it'd be great. And I couldn't hang out with him for the day because I was so much up in my story about it. And I actually kind of said to Deb, I can't go. Something in me kind of knew, don't actually go. take a step back. I could see what was going on for me. I was just ripped with jealousy about the time he was spending with other people because he's my best friend. He should be hanging out with me. And I could see that going on for me. And it felt incredibly real. And, you know, you saw the state I was in, didn't you? It genuinely was extremely real and painful for me in those moments. I genuinely was. It was very much.
It wasn't nice.
And I kind of spoke to Deb and said, there's a tiny weeny part of me that knows this is me and not him, but it mostly feels like it's him, and he should be hanging out with me. And so I just know in this moment what I need to do is step back. And there was a tiny little wisdom voice that was telling me, take a step back here. Let him go out for the day and hang out with the people he wants to hang out with, and stay. And you were staying at the hotel.
Yeah, I was staying at the hotel, and you said, "I need to stay at the hotel, but I'm going to do something I shouldn't. Make me do the right thing."
Yeah, I was
help me do the right thing.
It was very much. What I saw was, if I go out for the day in this headspace, I'm going to say something or do something that might not be, you know, that might damage our friendship in a way I kind of know I don't want to do that. I kind of know I didn't want to do that to our friendship. So I stepped back, and I actually spent the day mostly with you, didn't I? And
yeah, we did.
We had some beautiful conversations, and I really got to a place where I absolutely saw that was coming from me. And nothing had actually changed in our friendship. You know, we were still good friends. We still, you know, we've hung out a few times since then. We have amazing conversations when we get to chat. And I can really see, looking back now, how much of that, like, that was an entire story that was coming from me, and nothing about how much he cared about me that hadn't changed. You know, we were still best friends. We still love hanging out. I just made up this humongous story coming from this jealousy, like the jealousy feeling was coming through really strong. And I'd made up the story about how my best friend should behave. You know, and even the kind of he's my best friend. That was, you know, that was a huge amount of what was going on. The only thing in the midst of that I kind of knew somewhere in me was, don't do anything from here.
That was very much what you were saying to me. I know I shouldn't do anything
from here. I'm gonna do something. You know, I'm gonna tell him to disappear off the face of the planet, kind of thing.
And your wisdom prevailed. Yeah. And by the end of the day, by the time we hung out together, you were totally in. And I was like,
that was all me.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, our friendship is good, and we still hang out, and we're still good friends, and there's nothing.
The system self-righted.
Yeah, there's nothing in
the
that
system self-righted.
I totally get the jealousy thing, and I don't know whether the question from the person came because of a relationship jealousy, or kind of what Deb was talking about, where it's more like they've got this and I should have it. But all of that it's all coming from the same place, you know. I was going, he's my best friend and he should be hanging out with me. I should have that friendship.
It's the stories we tell ourselves, isn't it? Like, you know, that someone else has got this thing and I should have it, or someone else. It comes from a story that we tell ourselves about how something should be different. And it does. In those moments, it feels incredibly real.
I can honestly say that in those moments, it was probably a couple of hours that I was really in the thick of it, and it was like I could have told him where to go in that moment. He was in the wrong and I was in the right, and I can really see, it's sort of funny telling this story now because of how much that shifted. And in the year since then, we've had some incredibly lovely conversations, and there was a situation that came up and we had a really beautiful friendship kind of moment all the way across the seas. The beauty of online chats, you know. And it really came to me a few times how incredible it is that in that moment there was this tiny voice of wisdom just saying, don't act from here. And that, as far as I can tell, really changed something for me, because I was like, oh yeah, there's a place here where I basically had a fork in the road. I could have done something and kind of effectively ruined the friendship and told them where to go, and, you know, or I could have said, step back and wait until this shifts for me, because it always does. Like, our feelings don't stay forever. Something shifts and we have a different experience. And I'm just thankful that in that moment, how I dealt with jealousy was to trust my wisdom and go with that teeny tiny voice that was saying, just wait for something different to come here. So I think for me, how do I deal with jealousy? I keep looking for my wisdom because I know that's there and I've seen it again and again and again.
And I guess that's our true nature, that thing that we're pointing towards. And to me, like, the way we play around with these challenges is us learning about our true nature, learning about our wisdom, learning that there are different choices we can make in those places. And what we tend to do, I know for you, when you're talking about that, is kind of like, you could see that you could repeat a mistake from before, and or you could, a fork in the road. I can go the way I've always been, or I can go somewhere different. And our true nature, our wisdom, that inner knowing is always there for us. And the more familiar we get with it, and I think kind of being a part of this conversation and taking part in challenges and playing, and know thyself, and we hear that wisdom. And definitely, how do I deal with jealousy? Listen to my own wisdom.
Yeah, get to know my true nature.
Absolutely. Nailed it, Bec. Nailed it.
I think we nailed it. That's what it is, yeah. So hopefully that went some way to answering that question. And we'll go on to our topic now.
Ooh.
So our topic this week, we've already actually started touching on this a little bit, I think, this seems to happen. We have a topic and it just kind of runs itself out through the programme, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
So our topic this week is security, and where does it come from? And we're not really talking about house alarms and that kind of security.
I dare say you could Google that.
Where can I get a secure alarm? No. So security, by that we mean that kind of knowing in you that you're okay. So we picked the word security tonight because we knew kind of this week we were going to be looking at that a little bit around money. But I think as we have these conversations, we talk about that in a few different ways. And I think some of the words we use is that okayness, or that kind of resilient part of us that is kind of always at peace and always feels secure and always knows that it's okay. And maybe peace or love or wisdom might be other words for that. But for tonight's topic, security, kind of, where does security really come from, was kind of the topic we wanted to look at.
And I think for me, this is pointing us back again to that deeper truth of who we are, and noticing that when we kind of find out about that, if you like, when we see that, when that makes sense to us, then when we live out in the world, we know that we're secure. And something else that we shared earlier this week is kind of coming to me around this, when we were talking about the analogy that we've often used for life around the screen, the fact that everything that we do in life, it comes from somewhere. When we are human out in the world and when we're doing something, it comes from somewhere. A little bit like if you go to the cinema, there is a screen and the film is shown on the screen. And if you haven't kind of got the screen, there's not going to be a film. And to me, it's the same in life. There is something at the back of this. There's something behind it, behind our life. And it's kind of getting to know about that, because from the film analogy, if we know that when we go to the cinema and we watch a film, there is a screen behind everything that's going on, and the screen doesn't get damaged by the film that's playing. If there's a war film playing, a horror movie playing, a love story playing, whatever, the screen stays undamaged. And then the film can do what it wants to do. It can, it can go to all extremes. It can play out doing whatever it wants because the screen is perfectly okay. And to me, that is how our security works. When we begin to see that we are a part of something much bigger than us, we are, I know in the past I've talked about it as plasticine, and kind of saying that's what we are, and we can't not be that. That's our essence, that's our truth. And no matter what we do, that part of us can't be damaged. And from that knowing, what my experience has actually been, from that knowing, the more that I am sitting in that knowing, I can go and kind of be that film on the screen of life. And I can be any film I want to. play at anything in the world when that knowing is at the back of me. And that knowing is always at the back of me. So I either have the experience of being aware and knowing that that is at the back of me, which means my experience of a horror movie is just an experience of a horror movie, or I can experience that without that knowing, and a horror movie feels horrific. It seems way too real to me. And so it looks to me that we have the capacity, and every human being has the capacity to know about their screen or their plasticine or the intelligence behind this life, whatever it is. We all have the capacity to know that. And then we get to play at, what do we mold ourselves into as this plasticine? What film do we play on our screen? And it is a completely different experience from doing that, from the knowing of that. So to me, security is built in and it is always there. Knowing that it is always there gives me an experience of being secure. Not knowing it is there, I'm still just as secure, but my experience can be pretty hairy when I'm not in that place.
What's coming to me as you're talking about the films there is I'm not a big fan of kind of horror films and violent type films. It's I can't do it.
Me neither.
But very, very occasionally when you're kind of watching something that maybe has a scene in it that's a little bit edge of the seat, one of the things I know that I do is during that scene in my head, I'm going, it's okay. The actor wasn't really hurt. They're just an actor. It's all just, fake blood or tomato ketchup or whatever it might be. They didn't really
they might have moved beyond tomato ketchup. The special
probably
these days.
Yeah. But I'm having I'm running a story in my head, reminding me effectively what you're just saying there, reminding myself of that blank screen, that kind of okayness that sits behind. That person isn't really being hurt. That person isn't really whatever it is that's playing out on the screen. And that to me is what I now do in life. I live my life with this kind of voice. And I think it's that same wisdom voice I was just talking about when we talked about jealousy. There's a voice that kind of runs through me that even when I'm in the midst of something, it might be insecure thinking, for example, that's telling me, this is happening and you're not secure and life isn't okay and you need to fix it and this needs to be different. There's this other voice that's running through me, the same one that kind of seems to pop up when I watch a film that's not quite so great, that's kind of saying, you know what, behind this, something's okay. You're an actor and you're not being hurt in this moment. There's nothing actually really damaging that's happening here. The backdrop is there. It's always there. And somehow that voice, sometimes it sounds more convincing than other times. I definitely notice that there are times when I can kind of talk it down. No, this is really real. This is really painful. This is really difficult. Whatever it might be, I can try and talk that voice down. But that voice, because I've intentionally kind of put myself in this conversation and I like to know more about my true nature, I like to look in that direction, that voice kind of meets me there and it says, okay, you want to know about your true nature? I'm going to keep reminding you, even when you think you're in the midst of the worst horror film ever. I'm going to keep reminding you there's this backdrop that's there for you. And for me, I can really see this when we talk about this security and it being the kind of true nature of who we are. What I really see around that is I can have insecure thinking, which, because we're talking about security, I feel that's kind of maybe the opposite of what we experience can be insecurity. And I can really big time have an experience of feeling insecure and really deeply kind of convince myself I'm not secure, and that life hasn't got this, and that this is on me and I'm going to struggle to do this. And so I don't feel great and I feel insecure and maybe I feel jealous like we talked about in the last question. I can really have a full-blown experience of that. And what comes to me, probably not always in the moments that's happening, but certainly afterwards, is that if that can happen for me, everything I'm pointing to here is real, is really what's happening, because that experience is coming to me through the energy of thought that we talk about. And if that energy of thought is giving me that experience, then
that's
I know
the one you're gonna have.
Yeah, then I know that's how this is going to work. And I know then that what we're pointing to is truth. That backdrop is truth, because what we talk about is that our experience comes to us via thought, but behind that thought, or before that thought, there's a place of security and a place of okayness. So when thoughts got me tangled up in that kind of experience, I'm like, oh, if thought is doing this, there's also that backdrop. Those two things kind of go hand in hand in my mind. So when that experience is kind of coming through me and happening, and I'm lost in it a little bit, there's a part of me that's going, yeah, and if thought can do that, it's just covering up that backdrop. That's what's happening here. And it kind of is like two sides of the same coin. If thought's doing that, I know that my system is doing its job. I know that it's working perfectly. And so therefore there must be this clean backdrop, this security behind the thought and the experience that I'm not secure, that I'm not okay. Behind that experience must be the okayness.
And when I was having a conversation with someone earlier today, and it was around money, and then we were talking a little bit like that, and then it's kind of, yeah, but then there's this practical side. I've actually got to pay my mortgage. I've got to do this. And what I really, really love about this understanding and looking in this direction is we have these conversations like this. We look at we kind of say things like our true nature and a deeper knowing and inner wisdom and things like that. And for me, before I came across this understanding, those kinds of things they looked fluffy and woo-woo, and they sounded nice. And yeah, when I heard people go, yeah, that feels really nice. Oh, I'm secure already. Yeah, and I've just looked at my bank balance and I've got to pay this bill, and all of that would be wiped off the table, and it would just look to me like I was in trouble. And what I have seen more and more is those two things, those fluffy words, those beautiful things, that pointing towards whatever it is, that is so, there is no separation between that and this bill that you've got to pay. They're not two widely different things. And what I have seen is, as I begin to see, oh, okay, so this is how it works, and that is where my security comes. So I have this wisdom, then it feels to me, so if I've got a bill that I need to pay, that is, the thinking around it is getting me all riled up. If I can see a place where I'm okay, it looks to me like the answer to how I pay that bill arises. That's kind of how it looks to me, that this is so useful in my real, normal, down-to-earth, ordinary life that I live. We have conversations around, okay, so we have household bills, obviously, and we have a bills account, and we have bills that we pay out for our business, things like this. So we do have conversations about where's the money going to come from to do this, and how's the money going to work for this, and where's our wages going to come from. We have incredibly practical conversations about very ordinary life stuff. And what I see is that is absolutely not disconnected from a knowing where my security comes from, and a trusting that this is all part of this exact same system. This is the plasticine, the film, the backdrop, whatever you want it to be. That's what it actually, that's the essence of it. That's what it is. That's where the rubber hits the road. That's where this understanding actually comes into its own. And my experience of getting wages, paying my bills, doing those very practical things out in life are incredibly different. I feel so secure around those kinds of things in a way that I never thought was possible. I thought I'd have to become a millionaire to feel that security. And that also reminds me of when we actually get to these places, it is very different to how we imagine it's going to be. I can remember watching my mum as a child peel vegetables and get our dinner ready, and me thinking, I'm never going to be able to do that. And if ever I get to a place in my life where I'm going to do that, I'm going to feel so different to this child that's standing here watching. That's something, so I'm going to have to be such a different person to be able to do that. And guess what? I'm not. I chop vegetables, peel things, I make dinners, and I'm not. I haven't changed in the ways that I thought I would have to get there. So it you know, your security, your knowing of this is already there. It's not this unreachable something different that you're going to have to attain before you have it. It's so normal. It's so ordinary. It's so peel the potatoes, pay the bills, and your true nature. They're not separate.
No. I just, when you were talking there about the kind of practicalities of life that kind of come to us sometimes, I was reminded we had a conversation this morning with someone who was telling us a little bit about sharing this in a business, and what kind of came to me as we were talking about that was his example. He talked about he had to go into a business that I can't remember the exact figures now, but it was something like 100. They needed to produce in the next year. This business needed to produce $100 million more than what they had been producing. And you know, he didn't share all the details as to why or anything like that, but just that basically he and his business partner went in for 4 days to a business, and that was their problem that they came with. We need to produce, we need to bring in another $100 million over the next year. And what I really could see when he was talking about what they kind of shared was, if those people in that business had spent more and more and more time looking in the direction of the insecurity they were feeling and the stress and the worry they were feeling around that, they would have done nothing. There would have been no productivity. They would have just been winding themselves and each other up more and more. And over the course of their 4 days together, they talked and they shared a lot like we kind of share, that to my mind, when we get into these conversations, something in us quietens down. Something in us knows the truth of what we're saying here, and something in us connects to and sees that secure backdrop that we all live against. And then by the end of those 4 days, they'd worked out something like $400 million worth of business ideas that they could put out. And by the end of the year, I think they'd got 90-something million that had come off.
They obviously they had all the ideas, and then they implemented certain ones and managed to make the 90,000 of it.
Yeah, so they were kind of this close. But that, to my mind, that example was just a perfect example of when we quieten down insecurity and the worry and the stress and the story that's out here. We're not going to get
but this
anywhere.
Is real, but money's a real thing, but this is different, but this is outside of that understanding. Yeah, when we separate it,
we're not going to achieve what we'd like. And when we come back to that quiet space in us, that knowing of okayness, our true nature, that place where security resides in us.
That little voice, incredible. That little voice,
voice that talks to us. It's incredible what magic comes out of there.
Absolutely,
potentially $400 million worth. Not to put a price on it. So
that's lovely. So
as always, the time has crept away from underneath us.
The time just flies by, doesn't it? So next week, I am actually on holiday with my family. I'm going away with
in this jumper.
Yeah, not taking my jumper with me, no, or Bec's jumper. So I'm going away next week to Centre Parks to have a week of swimming and relaxation and looking after my little grandson. So I'm really, really excited about that. So I'm dropping Bec right in the lurch. No, she can't wait.
So much is going to happen next week. So next week, our YouTube show won't be on YouTube. We're going to bring on a guest, I'm going to bring on a guest next week, so that I can have a beautiful conversation with someone else for a change. It'd be nice.
Lovely Rohini Ross is going to be speaking. So Bec is going to have the pleasure of ditching me
and speaking to Rohini.
Jealousy. How do I deal with this, Bec?
I'll tell you how to deal with that afterwards. So I'm going to be speaking to Rohini Ross, and we'll actually be talking on Zoom because we can't bring a guest onto YouTube. So we'll put links and stuff everywhere so that you can get onto that with us. And they'll actually be at 5:30 next week. And we're going to be looking at the impact that this understanding can have on relationships. And spoiler alert, Rahini's got some great stuff to share on this. So be there, don't miss us. It's going to be fab. And I'm sure Deb will be having a lovely time on her holiday. And I'm not jealous about that at all.
Good. And as always, if you've enjoyed this show, if you like how we talk about this, if you like what we do and you want to work with us, we have lots of opportunities to dive deeper into this with us. So please be in touch and we will let you know about that. So have a really, really, really great week. And I won't see you on this show. I am around for the rest of this week and over the weekend. But yes, I'm going off to enjoy myself. But hopefully I will catch up with everyone
soon. We'll catch up with you all soon. Have a great evening.
Care. Bye.
Bye.